Hey guys, welcome to today's lesson. My name's Harrison Reed and I'm here to teach you the trombone, and I'm here to show you that anyone can do this and anyone can be a good musician. But first, for this lesson, we got to start with maintenance. So today I'm going to be talking about how to maintain a rotor on an F attachment. You can see here I've got my Edwards tenor trombone. The valve's been acting a little slow on me, so here we go. What do we need for this? We need a trombone with an F attachment. We need a couple oils from Hetman's. Now the important thing is, if you aren't currently using Hetman's and you're using some kind of natural petroleum-based rotor oil, those things don't mix with this. So you'll have to clean your rotor, or you'll have to do the same procedures using a petroleum-based oil. That's why I like Hetman's. I use Hetman's on my tuning slides, I use it on my rotor, and they all mix, they all dissolve into one another, so you don't wind up with rotor oil from here seeping down into your slide and gunking up all the works, or even worse, seeping up into your tuning slides. And like if you had petroleum-based oil up here and Hetman's on the valve, and it, when you in storage, moves up into here, it turns into like honey, and that's gross. You have to get it all cleaned, and then it works its way back down to the valve, and then that gets dirty. So do yourself a favor early on, use Hetman's. I'm not being paid by Hetman's, I'm not funded by anyone. This is the stuff I use, it's the best. Okay, so what do we do? There's a couple things that you need to know about how rotors work. On the front, this fancy little cap, I call this the front of the valve. There's some people who say this is the back, but anyways, this is where the bearing plate is. So we're gonna wanna take that off. Here we go. And you can see this round section right here is called the bearing plate. And on the inside, that little circle in the middle is the bearing spindle. Inside this rotor, there's the outer housing, there's the bearing plate, and then there's a piece of brass, which is the rotor, which has the tubes that connect all these in there, and that rotates. Our goal today is to make sure that the rotor core has a light coating of Hetman's light oil on it, and that the spindle, which comes through the front of this bearing plate, has bearing and linkage oil on it. And then in the back here, I'll turn this around, where this arm connects is another part of that rotor core that has another spindle that comes through, and we want the bearing oil on that as well. This sounds all complicated, but it's really easy. I'm gonna show you how to do it. There's a couple things that we wanna do. Let's see. We wanna get the main tuning slide off. Cool. So I've just taken off my main tuning slide. Be careful with this. These legs are very delicate. And this leg up here is very delicate. So if you don't, when we're putting this back together, you don't want to have it on an angle, because these will come out of straight. They won't be straight anymore, and then you'll have a heck of a time getting this on and off. So be very careful with this tuning slide, okay? We'll put that off to the side for now. All right. Why did I take the tuning slide off? Well, we want this access from the rotor side, you can't really see, through this tube, so we can get oil down onto the rotor core from the top, and then we're also gonna go through here and get it in through from the bottom, okay? I recommend, as we're doing this, and I'll tell you when to do it, to have like a tissue or something that we can put in here to absorb the excess oil. But I'll tell you how to do that when we get there. All right, step one, we're gonna oil the rotor core. So we need our Hetman's 11 light. If you have an older horn where maybe the rotor's a little loose, you can use Hetman's 11.5 or Hetman's 12, I think. Those also work. They're a little thicker, so they'll help seal the valve. So we'll take this off the stand. I like to lift this trombone upside down. I'm gonna have my finger on the rotor here. And the reason why I wanna do that is that as I empty this in, the rotor core is moving, so some of that oil will get onto the core. See how I'm doing that? Okay. At this point, would be when you'd want to put a tissue in here if you want to catch the excess oil. I'm not worried about that today. So I'm gonna kind of move this horn around, and I'm gonna keep working this rotor, and that is gonna help that oil, which is probably still mostly up in these tubes, kind of seep in and hit that rotor just the way we want it to. So there we go. And then I'm gonna do the same thing through this top tube. All right, so holding it, I'm still gonna be working the rotor, and I'm just gonna do a couple drops through from the top. And you should be able to feel quite easily, all of a sudden the rotor will start opening up and moving a little faster in this housing that it's in. The rotor core is gonna start moving a little bit better, but we're not done yet. So that's, all right, I can feel it. Yeah, the core has that Hetman's light on it, we're good. Now, we have a couple more spots we need to oil. Remember I talked about the front spindle, which is that little circle in here. We need to get the bearing oil on that, and then its partner spindle in the back of the rotor. So, moving on. We'll just leave that there for now. Bearing and linkage, Hetman's lubricant number 14. Get this going. Oh, it's on there. All right, where does this go? Okay, we'll take this horn off the stand again. And all we want to do is we're going to just put it directly on that little circle where the brass is a slightly different color and where we can see those witness marks. The witness marks are what help you, if you're going to take your rotor completely apart, it helps you see if the rotor's aligned. Because if your rotor's out of alignment, where the tubes line up and where this neck pipe goes through will be blocked. It will be partially blocked by the rotor. So that's what those witness marks are for, is to help the tech or you. Maybe I'll do a video someday taking apart my valve. I do it, that'll be involved. But so what I'm doing, I put the bearing oil on there, and I'm just gonna move it to work that in. And that's gonna penetrate in around the bearing spindle and kind of into the bearing plate a little bit. And you'll feel, all of a sudden your rotor is gonna start working a lot better. This oil is a little thicker than the other stuff that we use, and that's important because the rotor core shouldn't be touching the housing that it's in. If it is, it's gonna get damaged. That rotor core should be frictionless, and it should not be touching the housing that it's in. So all that oil is doing is preventing air from getting in and out and kind of lubricating in between the housing and the core. Now the bearing oil that I just put on the bearing plate, that's where all the friction is, and especially on the back spindle. So get your cap back on there, and now we're gonna take a look at this back portion, which is where the actual spindle is. Now, we'll grab our bearing and linkage again, and every model is a little different. You wanna look, sometimes you can see the spindle coming out, and sometimes there's an arm, like on mine, there's an arm blocking it. This stuff's pretty good about penetrating into there. So you kind of just work a little bit of the oil until you can see it seep in, and right there I feel it. My rotor's now very free to move. And again, flip that and kind of work it so that bearing and spindle oil can get in and around the spindle. All right, we're not done yet. It's very important to do this maintenance, not only so that your rotor moves freely, but if you don't do it, like I was talking about, you don't want that friction, you don't want the core moving in its housing. Once the oil dries out and it starts scraping on it, your rotor will go fast. You don't want that to happen. You want a long lifetime of playing your horn, and you won't get that if you're not oiling properly. All right, now be very careful when you're putting this back on. Again, see, I've already got it where it's not going on straight. If you feel any resistance, that's how you get these things. I might not be able to do it from this angle for the camera. See, I'm pushing it in at a bad angle. So yeah, take it out. You just want to get it started. Nope. Might take a couple tries. And you can see it. Yeah, there we go. Come on. There it goes. Okay, so see how careful I had to be? If it goes in just at a slight angle, because these tubes kind of have a little curve to help you get it on there, you can get it in a ways at a bad, funny angle, and then that's when your tubes start getting scraped up and messed up. So take your time when you're replacing your main tuning sled. You don't want to knock those out of alignment. That will be bad. Okay, so what have we done so far? The light oil, the spindle oil on the rotor. There's one last thing. If you have, and most trombones are this way, this kind of mini ball linkage, it works just like the joints in your arm where there's something around a ball joint, or in your knee or something like that. There's one more type of rotor. It's very oil, very thick ball joint. This is number 15. There's a huge difference between 15 and the 14 that we just used. This is super, super thick. You don't need a lot of this. So I'm gonna go in and look at these ball joints here, and I'm gonna put just a little bit on and move this back and forth so that that oil gets in there. And again, on the lower one, just a little bit. And it's thick, so you have to squeeze it a little bit. All right, and then I'll work that in. And then to finalize that and work that all the way in, yeah, I can feel it again. There's all of these points, these ball joints, these spindle, the bearing plate, the rotor itself, those are all points of friction. And they dry out, and once they start scraping on each other, not only does the rotor not work properly, but it will start to damage itself from the components grinding on each other. So I would say you probably have to do this about once a week. This video has been about 10 minutes since I started. It's 10 minutes of your day, but now you're gonna have a rotor that's working great. So do yourself a favor, buy some Hetmans and take care of your rotor. Hey, we'll see you next time. Thanks.